In this episode, we see Frieren with Fern near a waterfall talking, and Frieren is talking about long-distance magic, saying that it is made from a combination of 3 elements for mages, the first being mana, then the power to project it, and finally control. But she believes that Fern already knows this, and Fern confirms it. According to Frieren's analysis, the magic dispersed in the middle of the journey, which shows that the amount of mana and the power to project it are insufficient. She tells Fern that this can't be solved overnight. Regardless of talent, she will have to work hard on it for years. Everyone has difficulties with this, but Fern doesn't seem to worry about it and asks her to work on it calmly. Fern listens attentively and affirms. After the meal, we see Frieren studying the grimoire that Hyder gave her. And then we see Frieren and Fern in the snow testing their skills in order to perfect them. Then we get a glimpse of Hyder's hell in a handkerchief. Then we see Fern trying to perfect her control. They also get very cold in the snow and try to warm themselves with a fire. And so Frieren spends a lot of time with them. Until we see Fern with long hair in the water. Frieren doesn't stop studying the grimoire that Hyder asked her to decrypt. And while she's studying, the old man Hyder enters the room and asks how Fern's training is going. And she says that in 4 years, she's reached the stage that would normally take 10 years. She's too dedicated, which isn't a very good thing. And Hyder says that he sees how much she likes magic because she spends a lot of time in the forest. And Frieren says that there is still a long way to go for Fern, and he reiterates that he will finish deciphering the grimoire before then. And then she says to Hyder, with this grimoire, the chances. And before she can finish her speech, the old man gets sick and falls to the ground, and then we see a rainy day, and we see Frieren's face through the window, a little sad, and Hyder telling her not to make the house. Because it was a miracle that he had been able to move normally up until that point, and then she leaves because she's going to hurry with the grimoire. She leaves in the middle of the rain and goes to Fern asking to stop the training because Hyder fell and she needed to be by his side. Fern is a little apprehensive because she still hasn't managed to reach the rock, and Frieren tries to explain to her that this is something she will achieve with time. But Fern doesn't accept this. She doesn't care about more time, because if she needs more time, Hyder will die, and she won't be able to show him. And then she has a flashback to when she was saved by him, and when she was thinking of doing something horrible, Hyder appears telling her that it would be a waste if she did that now. He tells her that it's been a long time since he lost an old friend, who unlike him had a lot of integrity and was the kind of person who would never abandon someone in trouble. If he had been alive instead of Hyder, he would have been able to save many more people. Unlike Himmel, Hyder just wanted to live out the rest of his life peacefully. But he realized one thing one day, dying like that. Everything he had learned from his friend about courage, determination, and companionship, all those precious memories would also disappear into this world. Just as if she died, it would be a waste for her to lose all those good things in her mind. And she remembers her parents. Fern said he was afraid of dying and leaving her alone. She doesn't care if she's a mage or not. Learning to live alone is her way of thanking him for what he's done. She wants him to think that everything is fine now. Frieren asks her if she has memorized everything she had taught him, and she says yes. Then Frieren tells her to do what she thinks is best from there, and then turns her back. Frieren goes to the library while Fern is in the forest with some birds on her head while she meditates, and Frieren continues deciphering the grimoire. While Fern trains a lot, until one day, Fern arrives at the place where that rock was and tries again to hit it using her skill. Then we see Frieren throwing all the pages she deciphered from the grimoire on Hyder's bed, saying that there was nothing recorded about resurrection or immortality, and Hyder says, "Really?" And she asks him if he knew. He says that the fear of death was immeasurable. If something like that really existed, Uig himself would have used it on himself. Frieren asks why, and he asks her how Fern is now, and she says that she still needs to polish some parts, but it's safe to say that she's at an adult level. The old man is happy that she made it in time, saying that she wouldn't hold Frieren back, and she's shocked that he planned the whole thing so that she could take the girl with her, because he was going to die anyway, and he says that the payment for decoding the grimoire is in the desk drawer, and asks to leave with Fern that night, and she asks him what he intends to do, and he says that as she can see, he won't last long, and he doesn't want her to go through the experience of losing someone again, and says that he'll leave Fern in her care. And Friaren says that he's just trying to be tough again, and says that Fern is ready to part with him, and that he needs to say goodbye to her before he dies, and make as many memories with her as possible. And she starts to cry, and he says that Friaren is a kind girl. But Fern was listening to everything while he was preparing a meal, and before he left, Friaren asked him why he had saved Fern, and he had a flashback of when he found her and also remembered his dear friends, and then he told her that the hero Himmel would have done the same, and she confirmed it by saying that it was true. Next we see Friaren at the exact spot where the rock that was Fern's challenge is, and she thinks she's going to do what Himmel and Hyder did. Then we see her and Fern in the cemetery at Hyder's tombstone, and Fern throwing a little drink on his tombstone, and Fern thanking him because thanks to Friaren she was able to repay Hyder properly. And Friaren responding by saying that the priest was a degenerate who screwed her over. Then 26 years pass after Himmel's death, and Fern and Friaren are in Turk in the Central Lands. They are picking pumpkins until Friaren tells Fern that it's enough, that they've finished. Then we see a man paying the reward he had promised them. Fern says that they only have simple services, and Friaren tells her that this is what the adventurer's life is like, and Fern asks what the reward was, and Friaren replies by saying that it was folk magic, a magic to heat tea, and that they would test it later. Fern is a little disappointed and remembers that the other day it was magic that removes rust from bronze statues, and before that it was a spell that makes sweet grapes turn sour. Thinking that they were just collecting weird magic, it seems that Friaren is quite fond of magic. However, he's a bit of a middle ground like her, but Fern has the impression that he's different. They went on until they met another customer, who was a herbalist, and who didn't have any magic to teach them. But Friaren said that it was fine because just teaching them about the flora of the region would be a great help. Then the lady took them to the statue of the hero Himmel. It was in terrible condition, and she was no longer old enough to do anything for the statue. She respected the hero Himmel because he did everything to protect the city, but the inhabitants of that time no longer cared, and it was distressing for her to see the statue in that state. Friaren, on the other hand, disagrees with the old lady, saying that she believes it was a consequence of Himmel's actions. It was his fault for being a show-off. He should have refused when they said they were going to build the statue. Then she remembers well how the process was to create that statue. He worried about his pose for 18 hours and stressed out the craftsman. In the end, he settled down in a position that didn't look like an idiot, and the old lady says that the story is interesting, and she remembers that there was an elf in Himmel's group. And Friaren says that she will clean the statue. And so she cleans the statue, leaving it an earring, and the old lady thanks her and is very happy, saying that there is no sign of rust on the bronze statue, and that she would like to put some color on it and maybe plant some flowers. Fern asks Friaren if she couldn't use magic to create a flower garden, and Friaren agrees, then remembers her friend and says that perhaps the blue moon herb would be better for his statue. Then we see the old woman researching the flower in a book and saying that it is a nostalgic name. In the old days, there was a rich vegetation in that forest. Friaren asks her if there were any of those flowers there. But the old woman says that they have all been destroyed and none have been seen on that continent for decades. Friaren gets up and says to Fern that they're going to leave, and then says that Fern is hiding something and tells her to show it to her and not to worry, that she won't get angry, and asks her to show it to her. And then Fern shows them 2 seed mice, and Fern says she'll take them back to the forest, and Friaren accompanies her to the forest and asks if they would look for the herb of blue light. And after a long conversation they decide to look. They find a gigantic turtle on the way and go to the old woman to consult her for more information. In the meantime, they learn a lot about flora from the old woman. 6 months have passed since they started looking for the blue light herb, and then Fern goes to visit the old woman alone, which surprises the old woman because it's rare for her to go alone. She pours the girl a cup of tea and tells her that it's been a while since they passed through the village, and Fern asks her if she thinks they've found the blue moon herb. Looking tired, she tells the old woman that Friren's fixation with magic is abnormal, and that if she carried on like that they'd be searching for years. Friren is a mage with the power to save many people. She shouldn't be wasting time on things that don't exist, and the old woman says that for Friren, it's not like that, they're different thoughts, but she's an adult and certainly has more time than the old lady and Fern, who are human, and she says that if she's honest with Friren about her feelings, she'll understand, and the old lady gives Fern a bag of seeds, and then she goes into the forest to talk to Friren, after which she gives her the bag of seeds and explains that those seeds were from a nearby species that she had saved for medicinal purposes. Fern says that they could plant them around the Himmel statue instead. And Friren says that she understands and has made her worry about it, and takes it into her head that she doesn't hold back any more time from herself, and it's about time. They'll just look for a bit longer, and then they'll stop. And Fern asks her, "How many years will this, a little longer?" And Friren replies, "Just a little longer," until just as they are about to argue, the rats that Fern had caught earlier and left in the forest appear nearby and then leave, and they decide to go after them. And the strange thing is that they leave blue footprints wherever they go. Then Fern asks Friren why she collects magic, and Friren says it's just her hobby. Fern doesn't believe it, and she says that it's the truth. She used to be very apathetic and lazy. And then she has memories of her friends having fun, and Himmel puts a wreath on her head. And Friren says that's all there is to it, but Fern finds the reason very silly, but Friren doesn't disagree with her friend's opinion. And while they were talking, they were following the footprints of the seed mice, and they ended up finding the herb of blue light thanks to those dear seed mice. And when Friren is collecting one of these flowers, Fern asks her why she's so dedicated to magic, because she can't understand it. Fern replies that she can, since Fern hasn't given up on becoming a wizard. Fern tells her that it's different because she's only satisfied with any power that's useful for living on her own, and that it doesn't have to be magic itself. And Friren replies that she still chose magic. And then she remembers the moment she was with Hyder with some butterflies in her hands, after which they finally plant the blue light grass around Himmel's statue and leave.